Dear reader, I'm Tony and this is Book Text. Today I'm going to wrap up what I read in November, but first, our word of the day is the word cryonaut. Cryonaut is a noun and it refers to a person who has been cryogenically frozen, intending to be unfrozen, thawed, I guess, in the far future. So the name for that kind of person is a cryonaut. Kind of unique usage there. So I slowed down my reading a ton in November. I've been really busy reading student work, student papers, and sometimes I just don't want to use my spare time, my free time, to read more. So I have been binge watching a lot of shows and playing a lot of puzzles and games instead. But I did finish 4 books. The first one is Lucy Worsley's Jane Austen at Home. I listened to this on audiobook and I really enjoyed it. I earlier this year listened to her book, A Biography of Queen Victoria. This was a biography of Jane Austen, looking specifically at her life at home, where she lived, the places where she spent her time, the people she was around. And I liked that specific lens into her life. It definitely had roles in the books that she wrote and the homes that she wrote about in those stories. So I just enjoyed it. It was fun to read. I actually had to stop listening to it because my checkout expired, and then I had to put it on hold, but luckily it came in really fast. So I was able to finish the last couple of hours not too long after listening to the bulk of the book. So I enjoyed Jane Austen at Home. I also finished George Eliot's Scenes of Clerical Life. This was a leftover from Victober. I underestimated how long it would take me to read, and I started it at the end of October. So I did finish this one. It is a collection of 3 kind of short stories or novellas, long short stories, so it's kind of novella length, about clerical people, clergymen, and the lives that they lead. And for me, the theme of this book, the major theme of this book, was fellow feeling, which was an interesting topic that came up a lot in Victorian culture, not just in their literature, but in their lives. They were really interested, and I think they became kind of aware of the needs of other people. I don't know if it was because they were suddenly able to maybe give more if they had a little bit of surplus, and they felt more like giving charitable donations. I don't know. But they had this kind of awakening in Victorian times of other people's feelings and needs. And this word emerged, and it comes up several times in this book, amongst other stories, of fellow feeling, which was their way of talking about empathy and understanding others. Which led to, of course, compassion and charitable acts. And if you think of stories like Charles Dickens' books, particularly A Christmas Carol, there's a lot of characters in there that help Scrooge develop fellow feeling, develop empathy, and have more love in his life. And George Eliot once berated Tiny Tim for being easy to love, easy to have compassion for. But what about people who have flaws, people who make mistakes? And in George Eliot's books, you see a lot of characters who make mistakes, who have serious flaws. And we are still encouraged to develop fellow feeling by the way that she explores their inner lives and the hard things that they've gone through. I really love that about George Eliot. She had a good sense of fellow feeling, of empathy, and so this book was all about fellow feeling for me, and I really liked that about it. Then I finished my collection of short stories by Katherine Mansfield, The Garden Party and Other Stories. And I love Katherine Mansfield. She was a writer born in New Zealand and immigrated to the UK. She was friends with other famous writers of her time, like D.H. Lawrence and Virginia Woolf. She died really young, and so we don't have a lot of writing from her But this was my first collection of her short stories. There's at least one more that I'm hoping to find and read because I loved this collection. It was about a lot of kind of small instances, small moments in people's lives, and it was just charming in that way. You felt a lot of fellow feeling for some of these people struggling with their challenges in these snippets of their lives. So I will definitely be hunting down more Katherine Mansfield. I remembered reading an essay in a book about Katherine Mansfield, and so I found that collection. It was Ali Smith's Public Library and Other Stories, where it's kind of like a collection of essays and short stories. But there was a very imaginative chapter in here where Ali Smith imagines talking to basically the ghost of Katherine Mansfield. I really enjoyed it. So if you like Katherine Mansfield, you might enjoy this collection of essays and short stories. The last thing that I finished was Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Womanist Prose. I obviously really enjoyed it. It opened my eyes to a lot of issues regarding race, regarding feminism, or in specific womanism, which was a line of feminism, a movement maybe, specifically looking at the lives of Black women. She talked a lot about race. She talked a lot about being a woman. She talked a lot about reading and literary analysis. Hi, kitty. She talked a lot about writing and her kind of writing process. She talked a lot about family. There was so much in here, and she really helped me to change my mind about some current issues, even though this was kind of a collection of things from the 60s through the 90s. Everything here was still relevant today. We're still dealing with the same, specifically like racial and feminist issues. And so I really enjoyed the way that she helped me change my mind and it inspired me into changing things about my own life, about my own thought processes, and to hopefully act more on those new thoughts. And because I was so inspired by her perspective, the next essay collection that I want to pick up is Erosion, Essays of Undoing by Terry Tempest Williams. Terry Tempest Williams is an environmentalist. She's a feminist. She's a beautiful writer. She has worked a lot with Indigenous and Native peoples in America, especially in the American Southwest. And I'm interested in seeing another interesting perspective into what it means to be a woman and what it means to interact with the world around us. And specifically, she's looking, of course, at the environmental aspect of the world around us. So I'm interested in kind of that ecological activism. I am also interested because I've been thinking about Indigenous peoples. I'm interested in any more Indigenous writing. So if you have recommendations for Indigenous authors, stories, whatever, please leave those in the comments. I have some Indigenous writings in my collection, my book collection, but I'm always open to more writings that will kind of open my mind, change my mind, improve me as a person. So that is what I read in November. It was a great month, even though I didn't finish that many books. I'm still reading some, and I will hopefully have more to read in December. Tell me what you're reading. Leave some recommendations for me in the comments. And remember, there's always another book.